So, of course, the best first step to conducting a successful job search is creating that marketing piece, that resume. We want you to have an effective resume. So, what is a resume? What should be included? Essentially, it is a compilation of you professionally, your education, your experience, your work experience, volunteer experience, any skills and strengths, accomplishments that you have. But it is you professionally. But also keep in mind that employers do not need to know your life story. They don't need to know every detail about you. And a lot of times people think they have to include absolutely everything on that resume to get them basically noticed. But you don't have to include everything. The purpose of that resume is to secure the interview. And then in the interview, you will be able to share more details about yourself. So there are only about 5 applicants that tend to gain those interviews out of every candidate pool. So when a job listing is posted, there could be, some of you who were at the panel last week, they shared there could be 100 to 500 candidates per a job opening. That's a lot of candidates. So just know that they narrow that pool down, and sometimes it could just be maybe 5 candidates that end up getting the interview. So we want to make sure you stand out. And how are you going to do that? So we're definitely going to share some great tips to help you achieve that today. But there was a really cool study done recently by the Professional Employment Organization called the Ladders. And what they did is put employers in a room, and they put a stack of resumes in front of them, and they had them separate the pile into 2 stacks. The yes, I can already tell I want to look at this resume further, and no, I'm not really interested. I'm going to move past this one. It just kind of think in your head, how long maybe would they spend on each resume during that study? It was an eye tracking study. So they were watching how long they looked at each resume. It used to be maybe we'd heard, oh, they spend about 2 minutes looking, maybe a minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds. The time just keeps getting cut in half. So it's actually now 7 seconds. During that eye tracking study, it was only 7 seconds that they spent per resume. So that's why it's so important to make sure you stand out. So the steps that you should take is essentially starting with the basics. Start with that job description. You know the job you're seeking, you're studying that job description. Essentially, it's a game of matching your skills to the needs of the employer. So they are giving you the answers. Use that job description as your cheat sheet to incorporate the language, incorporate the skills that they are requesting. If they are mentioning communication skills 5 times in that job description, it's probably a good idea to include communication skills and examples of those in action on your resume. So definitely study that job description and utilize the verbiage they're giving you in that job description and make yourself as relevant as possible. And then you want to choose a resume format that works best for you. All of us are different. We have different backgrounds, different education, different skills, strengths, work experience. So all of our formats could look totally different, and that is fine. You need to pick a format that works best for you to market your skills successfully. So the longtime standard has been that chronological format. And so you'll just see a quick example, a basic example here. And it starts off with contact information at the top, and then it goes into the education piece. So we definitely recommend, especially since you're a current college student, to have that education component at the top. That's going to speak their language quickly, focusing on that relevant degree that you're pursuing. You also see that you can include coursework that's relevant. It's showcasing, hey, maybe I haven't applied it in the workplace yet. I'm learning it in the classroom. So I'm ready to apply it based on the theory I'm learning in the hands-on applications in the classroom. And then it goes into the work experience. If you have work experience, this is where you can list that, and it's reverse chronological order, so most recent first. And then just any other categories, any other skill sets that you want to share. But that may not be the best format for everyone. Not all of us, not all college students are going to have work experience yet, so that's okay. We can focus on a different format. Targeted and skills-based resumes, these can be great for college students, As you can see, it starts off the same contact information, the education piece, but instead of going into work experience, it goes to the skill sets. So this is where you can pick and choose from all of your experiences in the classroom, if you're involved with student organizations, any volunteer experience. These are the skills, those transferable skills that you want to focus on that employers are looking for. And if you have the work history, then you can include that there below, but you see it's not providing the details. So that's why you're picking and choosing the skills you want to focus on. Or maybe you're a career changer and you have been, for example, in the service industry, maybe restaurants for a long period of time, and now you're focusing on this engineering direction. There are still fantastic soft skills and transferable skills that you can focus on. I mean, communication is going to be valued by any employer, teamwork, those types of things. So this is where you can pull those skills out and focus on the language that, those transferable skills that would be valuable to any employer. And then, of course, any other categories that are relevant to you. And here's just an example that showcases there are not a lot of rules to resume writing anymore. It doesn't have to be a specific format as long as you're including the relevant content that employer is looking for that's going to help you stand out. So this is just a little bit more modern format, and it looks nice, real clean, clear, concise, just a little bit more modern. And then just a quick, just threw one together for engineering, just focuses on some skills, and you can see the technical skills here being included because, of course, if you have those technical skills, you want to showcase them clearly. But just as those panelists last week, if you were involved in that, they were talking soft skills, soft skills, soft skills. So we definitely want to showcase those in action. You can see that first statement here on this resume, worked with a team. So it's showcasing that teamwork and then giving the details of that team. But you can also see SolidWorks, AutoCAD. So absolutely focus on those technical skills too. But just a little bit different layout, shows a little bit of creativity as well. So some general tips that we want to focus on in all of the examples that you just saw, and there's no objective statement. Many employers are saying that have been surveyed that objective statements just truly don't add value anymore. So this can be a space saver for you to focus on that great content and focus on those skills that they're looking for. Because most of the time we're not really saying anything when we make an objective statement. I can't tell you how many objective statements I've read that just state something like seeking a position where I may utilize my skills to contribute to the success of the company. What is that saying? It's not really saying a lot. So you can use that as a space saver and just jump right into your education piece and then share your skills and your experience. If you do have a summary or a profile, that's a little bit different. But you just want to make sure that you're not stating the same thing in your summary or profile that you are in your cover letter and not repeating it throughout the resume as well. So just avoid that redundancy and make sure you're not repeating the same content over and over in your documents. You can strive to keep that resume to 1 page. 2 is fine, but just remember that eye tracking study, 7 seconds is the average amount of time spent, viewing that resume, scanning that resume. So if you have all the good stuff on that second page, you may get overlooked because you didn't catch their attention on that first page. So just make sure you're including your content in an order that's valuable and relevant to the employer. And this isn't like a composition paper. You don't have to have, specific margins and, tabs and things like that. So as long as there's just a little bit of clean space around the edges, you are good to go. And typically 10 to 12 point font size is the standard for a resume. Anything smaller can be pretty difficult for the reader, but we can help you consolidate your content. Please don't try to squeeze in, if it just goes into that second page of a couple of sentences, please don't put it at a 7 or 8 point font. Employers don't want to try to read that with a magnifying glass, but we can help you to format your documents as well. And then use a more modern font style. The longtime standard was chronological style, and then Times New Roman was the actual font, the font style. But choose a more modern font style. Calibri, Arial, Tahoma, those are great choices. It makes it look really clean and polished. So we just recommend there's tons of font styles out there. Choose one, but don't let it be too creative. I mean, we don't recommend italics or anything that has, scripted type of font style, but Arial, Calibri are really great choices. And then as you notice, all of the examples, the samples on the resume, bullet points were utilized. So you want to avoid paragraphs. You don't have to format it like a comp paper, but they also don't want to read a comp paper. They want to be able to easily scan through that document for those keywords and phrases. So use those bullet points, and it makes it really clean, concise, and to the point, and they can easily find those keywords and content. But then also, maybe we got a new job and we just get the old resume out, put the most recent job at the top, and call it good. Well, you definitely want to take inventory of your information each time you apply to a new job. You want to also make sure that tense is correct and consistent. If you're no longer performing a role, make sure you go and you change the action verbs to past tense. And of course, for your current role, you want to make sure those action verbs are in present tense. And then utilize keywords. We talked about studying that job description. Take it further, research the company and find out as much as you can, find out how you'll fit. And so using those keywords, it's so important because they may have applicant tracking systems. They've become much more common because they're much more affordable. So even smaller and mid-sized companies have started utilizing this technology. But just keep in mind, they may have this ATS system in place that basically has an algorithm. And if you don't meet a certain percentage of keywords and phrases that they are requiring for that position, a human may not even see your resume. So it may get kicked out before an actual person is able to review it. So that's why it's so important to utilize the information that they're giving you and give examples. And then use action verbs to articulate your experience. You want to avoid phrases that start with responsible for. You don't want to make it sound like you're just restating their job description. You want to show accomplishments, achievements, results. And we have a full 2-page document that has a lot of these great action verbs that can really help you brainstorm some great statements, some action statements for your resume. But these just really help your statement stand out. And you don't want to start your sentences with I either. You can simply start with that action verb and give great examples of your skills in action. All right. So we are a part of the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and they do a lot of fantastic surveys. And so just want to share that the last 3 years, the top 4 competencies, the career readiness competencies or soft skills have remained the same. So critical thinking and problem solving, teamwork and collaboration, professionalism, work ethic, oral and written communications. This is across all industries. So these are the skills that employers are looking for. They want to see those soft skills in action. So it's so important to include examples of these soft skills. For teamwork, how have you worked as part of a team? What was an outcome of a team project? How did you contribute? Did you delegate, tasks and to others? Or how did you communicate with that team? Showcase the communication. It doesn't matter what type of job it's been in. Showcasing these skills it's so important for an employer to see that you have these soft skills and that you include those in the resume. So definitely think of examples, showcase examples, and career services can definitely help you come up with these statements or help you polish these types of statements. And you see the little stat there at the bottom, 67% of HR leaders have withheld a job offer due to candidates' lack of soft skills. So you can have all the technical skills all day long, but if you're not able to communicate effectively with your team, if you're not able to, if you're not communicating with your manager, maybe you're going to be late one day and you just decide to show up late and there's no communication. That's not going to go over well with your supervisor. So it's really important that you incorporate those, you start practicing those, getting involved and starting to communicate and working with others at the college level is going to really help you succeed down the road as well. So make sure to include those. And then polish your written image. And we are definitely going to talk a lot more about these types of things next week when we go over the social media do's and don'ts and the online presence with the social media content. But just any errors on that resume or any documents that you include, make sure they are error-free. Employers might think you have a lack of attention to detail, that you're just not really thorough in proofreading and catching those errors. So an estimated 77% of hiring managers may disqualify resumes because of those mistakes or errors on that document. So it's so important to proofread it. You know what you're trying to say. You've read it over and over and over. Have friends, have classmates, have career services, absolutely send it to us. We'll be happy to proofread that and help you. But also, a lot of people don't think about that email address that you're utilizing to send that resume. That could be the first impression that an employer has of you, that email address. And if it's something crazy, it might kick it out into their junk mail or their clutter. That happens to me all the time when students might try to send an email from their Gmail instead of their TCC email. So that's a conversation we have. But hotmama99@gmail is probably not a good email to send to an employer, but it happens. So make sure you clean up the email address. Make sure you choose one that is professional. Something like your TCC email would be perfect. Just combination of your first name, last name, and so they can tell it's a it's a legitimate request, a legitimate email coming in for one. But employers are looking also online. One of the first things they may do is type your name into Google to see what content they can come up with, to see what information they can find about you on the internet. So don't put anything out there that could jeopardize your job search. We hear over and over, we see stories in the news about maybe employees posting negative comments about maybe customers they've helped that were maybe not the best customers. So maybe making complaints. So be careful. Employers are looking. So make sure you're representing yourself professionally. If whatever you're on, Instagram, Facebook, we recommend you also having a LinkedIn profile. We can help you with that to represent yourself professionally. And we're going to talk a little bit more about LinkedIn next week as well. And then networking is fantastic to help you build your resume. And, a lot of students don't think that that's even content they can include on their resume, but it absolutely is. You are involved in, organizations and events on campus. You can absolutely include that in your resume. Talk about how you contributed, how you participated, what your role was, and then just the communication skills that you're building there and the communication examples you can provide from those types of things. But, any networking event, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, definitely take advantage. TCC offers a lot of opportunities. And, when we're back in person, that'll be fantastic to network at those events. But just know that the virtual events will continue. So definitely do both, participate in both. But beyond even the TCC organizations, get involved in the community. There are other organizations, volunteer in the community. It doesn't have to be relevant to your specific career field either. It's still networking and it's still helping you build those soft skills, and you're building that network. So there are people out there that would be willing to speak on your behalf, that have seen you communicate with others, that have seen your work ethic, that have seen your teamwork, how you present yourself and how you you act and represent yourself professionally. So they'll be happy to pass your story along and possibly pass your resume on, or be able to provide you with a connection and a direct connection that you can send your resume to. All right. So we are going to jump into some interview tips. Of course, we'll have questions for resume and interview tips at the end, but we'll go ahead and move on into the interview piece. All right, so we talked about that job description, really studying it, but it's super important to research the company and find out everything you can about the organization. So are they local? Are they regional, national, international? And their community involvement, what's their mission statement? Learn about the history of the organization. Maybe you volunteer and maybe they are involved in community service and they do the same types of outreach. So that would be a great way to relate to them, and maybe share your story about that and ask about opportunities to participate as an employee of their company too. But it really helps you prepare for the interview, gives you the confidence to be able to answer and ask questions intelligently. So it's super important to not only, make sure you match the job description, but by researching the company, you're going to understand a little bit more about how you can fit with that organization, how you can contribute. So you kind of see the big picture and what you can add, what value you would bring to the company. And so doing that also, it's going to help you see, the strengths that you have and how you can share those stories and those experiences to add value for the employer. And it's so good to go through your resume and think of examples and think of your stories, your success stories. And by researching the company and taking inventory of your own skills, that's going to really help you do well during that interview process. So of course, we recommend practice. And these are just a few, practice questions that you can anticipate an employer asking of you. There are going to be traditional questions, the dreaded "tell me about yourself," which that can be a very hard one for people. It's catching them off guard if they don't practice. So that "tell us about yourself," it's kind of that elevator pitch that we've talked about over and over. But they want to know about you, just like on the resume. During the interview process, they want to know about you professionally. So "tell us about yourself" does not mean, well, I'm from Tulsa, I have 3 dogs, 2 cats, a rabbit, and I like long walks on the beach, I'm a Virgo. It doesn't mean that. They want to know about you professionally. So keep that in mind. And then just questions like, what did you do at this organization? What would you do if? Behavioral questions can be very difficult if you don't practice them. Basically, they're wanting to gauge your future success and performance based on past experience and performance. So tell us about a time when you experienced conflict in the workplace and how you resolved it. And it's good to have a couple examples, maybe for each question, because some of the questions can seem very similar, or maybe they want to hear another example. So it's always good to think of different answers, maybe multiple answers for the same question. And then of course, industry specific. So maybe they want to know why engineering. Why did you choose this field? And that's your chance to tell them about your passion. If you have a really unique story, that's great. And then tell me about your specific experience, maybe in your engineering courses, or if you've had engineering experience, that's their questions they're going to ask you about that, about those technical skills and such. And then you will always have the opportunity to ask questions. And when they ask you, do you have any questions for us? What questions do you have for us? You should always have some questions ready to go. Just an example there. What are the 3 most important characteristics you value in a candidate? That's a great one to ask if they haven't shared that information. Other questions could just be about the company culture if they haven't shared much about it. You could even turn it around and ask the interviewer, can you tell me about what you enjoy the most about this organization, about your role here, maybe a day in the life of, and so that's kind of that professional flattery, turning it on them a little bit. But a lot of times they love to speak about their experience too. But you can also get some insight into the morale. If they're really excited, and they seem very happy to be there, that's going to give you some insight into the morale of the organization too. So that's good to know. And then that elevator pitch that I mentioned, it answers that "tell me about yourself" question perfectly. It's great for a job fair. If you just have 60 seconds to maybe share with an employer, if they you're at the table and they say, "tell me about yourself," this is your chance to sell yourself quickly. So you want to cover your background, your education, any relevant experience, skills, strengths, accomplishments that are relevant, maybe why you're interested in the field. And if you have that great story to tell about why the direction that you're pursuing in engineering, this is your chance to do so. So just a combination of those types of things it's great to include in that tell me about yourself question, because it can really catch you off guard if you're not prepared. So we really recommend, practicing writing down answers to these questions. We would absolutely love to do a mock interview with you. And we have been doing mock interviews, virtually since we went remote back last March. So we'll continue to do them virtually. We'll do them in person when we're back in person, because we foresee that both are going to be continuing in the future. But write down answers to the questions, practice with friends or family members. It really helps ease the anxiety. It helps you become more confident, and it really helps you promote yourself more confidently as well. So recommend doing that. All right, in virtual interview, we want to include some virtual interview tips, because it is a little bit different, than being in person. So it's definitely something we want to cover today as well. A lot of times you may not think of it. Well, I've been taking my classes from home, so I'll just use the same spot, no big deal. But participating in a class is a little bit different than participating in an interview with an employer. So you definitely want to be thoughtful and take the time to choose an area that was going to be quiet and free of distractions. Like I right now can hear a mower in the distance outside. You want to make sure that it's not going to be super loud. Maybe you have a window open because it's a beautiful day. And then someone starts mowing. Close all the windows. Don't have any music on in the background, any TVs on in the background that can be distracting for you and for the interviewer. But just pick a quiet place, maybe not out in the open in your home or your living space. Maybe if you have a place where you can get into a private room and close the door, that would be great. So you're not going to be distracted by people, by pets, by things outside. So it's just really important to pick that place in advance. And then choose a professional background. That doesn't mean it has to be a virtual background or anything like that. Just make sure to not have a pile of laundry in the background or something like that. Make sure it's just tidy, free of clutter, and just maybe has something simple in the background. I have maybe a cabinet over here. There's just one thing on the wall, and then just the window. So there's nothing too distracting. But you just don't want it to look too busy to where they're not looking at you. They're just trying to find all the items in the background and figure out what those are, or maybe just a few tasteful decorations on the wall. And it's always good to have just make sure the lighting's good as well, so they can see you and see your body language. So it's good to test it out beforehand. And our internet connection, oh my goodness, we've all had these issues from time to time. And this happened to me early on when we first came home to work remotely. My husband was working from home one day, and I said, oh, I'll just go over in the office. Well, you think the office would be a good place to be on Zoom. Well, the internet connection in that room, I hadn't been in there yet. I had been in other rooms of the house. So it kept cutting out. It wasn't a good room for me to be in. So you need to test it out in advance. Plan where you're going to sit, plan, the room, make sure the internet connection's good, get on Zoom and make sure it connects. Do a mock interview with us from the room that you're wanting to utilize during your interview, so you can make sure you're not going to have any connectivity problems, because you just don't want it to be cutting out during that crucial moment. And then silence your phone, just as you would in an in-person interview. Make sure that phone is not a distraction. Put your phone away. Don't have it next to you. It's human nature for us to want to look at our phone. We're constantly distracted by it. Even if you have it on silent, it's sitting next to you, it could still be a big distraction. So you want to be able to focus on the interviewer, the interview, not any incoming text messages or phone calls. So just, I would say, put it out of the room and don't let it be a distraction. So you can just clear your mind and not have that on your mind at all. And then turn off notifications on your computer as well. Maybe you keep your social media sites up. There's email. You don't want to be distracted by messages that are popping up, new notifications. So just like with your phone, turn off maybe close down everything except the Zoom meeting that you're on, so you're not going to be distracted by anything. It'll also make your computer run more efficiently and won't use up as much battery. So just don't let anything be distracting, and make sure that's the only thing you can see the interviewer. And if you do have other members in your household, let them know as well, because we've seen the funny stories about people entering the room. We've seen national news anchors being interrupted by children, by just funny stories. It's happened, and that's life, and there's some funny stories. But let them know in advance that you will be interviewing, that this just isn't a traditional class experience that you're going to be going through, that you will be interviewing with an employer for a job opportunity. So they won't disrupt you or interrupt you, and maybe they'll remain quiet throughout that interview. So just remind them beforehand, make sure they keep the volume down. I would ask them, hey, if it's a nice day, maybe go outside, take a walk, or maybe go run an errand, something like that, so you can really focus and not be distracted by anything that's going on in the home by others. And we know Zoom has an app for our phones, for our mobile devices, but it is always best to utilize a laptop or a computer. I've done mock interviews with students, and not a big deal for a mock interview. However, it was distracting. I have students that are trying to use their phone instead of their laptop or computer, and the whole time they're turned sideways and they can never get themselves in the right direction. And so it was entertaining, to say the least. So it also will help the picture stay stationary. It's just one, if you're trying to hold your phone or if you have it propped up, it's just not going to translate as well as it would on a laptop or a computer. So they'll have a better view of you. You'll definitely be, zoomed in and clear that way. So I would definitely recommend trying to have that stationary view with that laptop or computer. And we all know that handshake happens as well when you're trying to hold your phone. It's not stable. And then practice, practice, practice. There are a lot of different capabilities to Zoom. If you've only used it to listen to your instructor during a class, or to listen to others speak, but you haven't really been a participant and haven't been speaking on Zoom, it's good to do that. Just to get familiar with it, get comfortable with it. And, that's why it's important to have maybe practice interviews with us, chat with classmates, chat with friends or family members to test it out. But it's important to get a feel of how the interview will go if you haven't done an interview, an online interview before. And wear professional attire. We, definitely recommend that you dress up as you would for an in-person interview, from head to toe. Even though they may not see you from the neck down, we still recommend against wearing those comfy pajama pants for that interview, as tempting as it is and tempting as it may be. Definitely recommend, you're going to feel more professional having a nice dress pants on, blazers, dress shirts, cardigans, dresses, skirts. These are all great options, but play the part from head to toe. You'll feel more confident, you'll feel more professional, even if they can't see your attire from head to toe. And then look into the camera. It's a little bit different. When you're in person, it's easy to maintain eye contact. It's easy to make that eye contact. You know where to look. They're in front of you. But, you definitely want to look at the other person. You want to see what they look like, and you want to see their body language. Well, that can be difficult to do when you're on a Zoom call. So I've been looking into the camera because I want it to look like I'm looking at you. That may be uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's perfectly fine when the interview starts, when everybody comes, there may be multiple people in the interview panel, to look at them. It's okay to look as you would, you're not going to be staring at them the whole time. And that's by looking in the camera, just as you would in person. You can look at them, and then you can look away, and then you can look back. So if you want to take note of what the panelist or the interview panel looks like, it's perfectly fine to do that. They'll want to do the same. But then when they're asking the questions, try to maintain that eye contact. And by eye contact, I mean looking into the camera on your computer. So that is a little bit different. So that's why it's important to practice, because you want it to make it look like you're using correct body language and looking at them when speaking. All right. So you also want to utilize the active listening. So just affirmation from time to time, positive body language, affirming what they're saying, nodding, showing that you're listening, smiling. So speaking slowly and clearly when you are giving your answers to their questions. But those nonverbal cues are even more important when you're on a Zoom interview or a virtual interview than it is in person. Really show that you're attentive, that you're practicing that active listening, and have that affirming body language when you're speaking and when you're listening, both. And it's good to, also know exactly where you're going to be sitting, what you're going to be sitting in, so you can sit up straight, have good posture. You don't want to be sitting in a chair or in a place where you can't really lean back, or if you lean back, you might slide down and look, frumpy, or your shoulders, your posture doesn't look good. So you want to be, sitting up tall, hands in your lap, just as you would in person. That's going to help you maintain that positive body language. Have your feet on the floor instead of, propped up on an ottoman or something. So just stand straight up, and that'll help you look more professional too with your shoulders, even though that's because that's all they might be seeing. So that's why it's important. Just a little bit of body language goes a long way. And then some interview don'ts. And you definitely don't want to approach the subject of salary and benefits until the employer does, until the interviewer does. Once they approach that, then you can ask questions, but don't bring it up unless they bring it up, first, and then you can communicate about that. And then, of course, don't make negative comments about others. When you're asked that question, tell me about a time when you experienced conflict in the workplace. If you haven't practiced that, then it might sound negative and it might sound like you're putting others down. So you definitely want to practice those in advance. That's why it is so important to practice those questions. Maybe you have been fired from a position before and you don't know how to speak to that. Maybe you've had a negative experience on the job or in the classroom and you don't know how to speak to that. So we want to help you create statements that are diplomatic, that are professional, and that are not negative about others. So, definitely practice situations and scenarios like that, and we are happy to help you do that. And then wrapping up the interview, interview's not over just because they finished speaking. You want to find out the next steps of the process. Always have a courtesy statement, thanking them for their time and the opportunity. If you, at the end, they're always going to ask you if you have any questions. It's also that opportunity if you left out some information that you really wanted to include. It's perfectly normal to be nervous during the interview process. Maybe you forgot something. This is that one last chance to market yourself. If there's a quick way you can summarize a story that you wanted to share, a quick way to wrap up why you would be a good candidate, this is your chance to do that. So you have one last chance to really market yourself effectively. And we recommend, of course, in career services that you follow up, not just with an email. Of course, we definitely send that email, but with a thank you note to the interviewers as well. Just a quick mention of why you'd be a good candidate. If you had a personal connection to them in any way, you could mention that. It's perfectly fine to be jotting down notes during the interview as well. So if there's something you want to remember about each person and maybe a connection, maybe you had something in common, maybe you've both volunteered at the community food bank and you want to mention that, there's just little things can go a long way, but actually sending a thank you note through the mail can really stand out. It's a lost art, and we definitely recommend doing that. And we can help you if you're not quite sure what you want to say in those. But then evaluate, take inventory of what went well, what questions did you do well with, what types of questions do you need to practice a little bit more that you maybe struggled with, that you need to improve upon. So when you have the next interview or a follow-up interview, you'll be able to be more confident and more successful. So that's why it's important to really, while it's fresh, to take inventory of what you could improve upon. All right. So I know that was a lot of stuff, a lot of information, but we do have some time for questions. And so we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And just want to thank you guys again for the opportunity to have Career Services speak to you about resume and interview preparation. And I am not able to see the chat, Jessica, for some reason.
I'm watching it. No one has put anything in there just yet.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm sorry if my camera's flipped.
No, it's not.
I've been like, my laptop camera is messing up. And so at like all of my classes for the last 3 weeks, I haven't been able to be on camera.
Oh, no.
So knowing that I was going to do this today, I tried to use my phone and just do the rotate thing. But real question is, I can't believe that. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you share more about what the process would be like to set up a mock interview with Career Services? And right now, is it only on Zoom or is it in person? I'm also wondering if, like, when we are more back in person, if there's the opportunity to do both. I could see how both would be beneficial. So just kind of talking about that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that. And I'm going to go ahead and put the next slide up, if that's okay, just to make sure you have our contact information. We are more than happy to do mock interviews anytime. You can reach out to either one of us directly. And I mean, the Career Services email that's listed there, it will go to us anyway. So just the careerservices@tulsacc.edu. If you email that, just say, hey, we'd love to set up a mock interview, then we'll get back to you, and it'll be with either Jessica or myself. So we'll be happy to take care of that. But you can also call that 595-7609 to schedule as well. So whatever works best for you. But absolutely, it's only virtual right now. We're hoping that we will be back in the office soon to be able to do both. But I love that idea because I truly feel that virtual will continue even when things are a little bit more back to normal and that things are in person. I still have a feeling, because of the success that and the ease and the convenience of virtual, that employers will still continue that virtual component in addition to that in person. So I think it'd be good to be prepared for both and to practice for both. So I think that's a great question. And yeah, go ahead.
I had a virtual or a Zoom interview for an internship opportunity in Washington, DC.
Wow.
And I thought that I was like totally prepared and ready, having had, other big interviews before, but it's a completely different experience.
Absolutely. It can be overwhelming, huh?
Yeah, it definitely can be.
I appreciate you mentioning that because it is. I mean, we're so used to that in-person communication, and it's a little bit more comfortable, even though, I mean, human nature, we're all nervous during any type of interview. But just via Zoom and getting to, or any virtual method, it is so different, and it's so important to practice and get a little bit more comfortable with it. So we are more than happy to do that.
We did have a couple of other questions come in. Someone asked about giving an example of a cover letter. So I went ahead and put our cover letter document into the chat.
Okay.
And that's definitely, just like resumes, that's something we are happy to look over for you and help you create a cover letter that is specific to a certain job. So I put the tip sheet in there, so that should be pretty helpful for cover letters.
Yes.
And then the other question, and we did have a question about the PowerPoint being sent out. We are recording this presentation, and so we will just send out the YouTube link to the presentation. So that way you have access to the PowerPoint and all of the dialogue that went along with it. The other question, and Melissa, I don't know if you want to go back to this page, talking a little bit more about soft skills. So soft skills, and we could do a whole presentation about soft skills specifically and what
Definitely.
they are. But really, they are the supplement to technical skills. So you learn all of these technical skills, all of your mathematics, your science. You're learning all of those technical skills. But the soft skills are things like problem solving, teamwork, communication, So those are all of those things that you don't necessarily get taught in the classroom, but there are ways to develop those skills. And if any of you attended the panel session last week, these soft skills were mentioned over and over again by those recruiters. So it is very important to be sure to include these in your resume and be able to talk about these in an interview. And again, that's something we're happy to help with.
Absolutely. And I really appreciated how in detail and how much they kept pressing the panelists last week. It's so good to have that reinforcement that we say every day to have those professionals in the field. And I really appreciated what Wayne said with Dell. He was saying, okay, you're an engineer. We know you're smart. Okay. We know you've got the technical skills. We know you're smart. Okay. But we want to know, how well do you play with others? Those teamwork skills, the communication, oral, written, so it's proving that, showcasing that. And by networking, by attending events like this, by getting plugged into, the engineering club and other organizations on campus, you're going to be building those soft skills. And think about any presentation you do in your classroom that is building your communication skills. So take advantage of all of those opportunities, volunteering, just getting plugged in. It's so important. And those are valuable experiences. And don't discount any work experience you have. You are building fantastic transferable skills, soft skills, by working in retail, by working in a restaurant, by working on campus in any capacity. There's so much, and we can help you translate that on your resume too.
And Melissa, you really just answered this other question without me having to even ask it.
I knew.
They just asked, they don't have experience as an engineer, which, of course, most students will not.
Right.
But how can I be competitive and get them to select my resume for an internship? And you just listed all of those, talking about your soft skills, whether they were developed in the classroom or somewhere else, networking, putting any of your work experience on your resume and highlighting those skills that they're looking for. What else?
Absolutely. And that's why, also when we showed the resume examples and talked about them, listing that education component first. So they'll see first and foremost, that, hey, I'm an engineering student. I may not have had this experience in the workplace yet. I'm ready to apply it though, because I've had it in theory, I've had it in my labs, I've had it through my tech, I'm learning them. Now I'm ready to apply it in the workplace. But it's not just about, those technical, it's always a combination of both. So don't downplay any experience you have with any type of job.
Yes, absolutely. Hunter hit on a point that Melissa hit on earlier today, and that is reviewing the job description and making, and that goes for internships. Internships do have, job descriptions and expectations that are communicated to you. So be sure to add those things into your resume. Any other questions? I went ahead and put that survey link in there just one more time, so don't forget to fill that out.
I'll go back to
Yeah, I don't see any other questions, so.
Make sure you have our contact info, but essentially anything to do with the job search, we're happy to help you. So don't hesitate. You can see we have a professional clothing closet as well. Make sure you have that resume ready to go and reach out to practice. And you don't have to wait until you have an interview opportunity. It's better to practice in advance to start slowly building that confidence and getting familiar with the process. And you can practice as often as you like with us.
Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. I would like to ask you about the resume. It's okay to include like engineer student, even though I have like 20 years of experience in other area, but now I'm studying engineer, I'm transaction career. So,
Absolutely, because you're going to have so much value from, experience from your other areas that, so it sounds like you're a career changer, and we can help you with that resume to market that resume effectively, and maybe pick and choose those skills, the most relevant skills that are transferable, that would kind of cross over and be valuable to those employers in the engineering field. So a lot of times it's just really narrowing it down, focusing on the skills that they're asking for, giving examples of those. So you may not need to include everything from your previous career, but the most transferable and relevant, in showcasing them. And so a lot of times just the format of that resume is going to be very important, as far as the layout of the content that you're sharing with them. And we're happy to help you with that.
thank you.
We had a question about the engineering club, so I'll let Bailey answer that one.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Jarrett and everyone. We would love to have you in Engineering Club. April is kind of finalizing the cap on, it is the cap on this academic year. And so the events that we're having in April are the Engineering Club events, but that means that the coming academic year in the fall, there's a blank slate to work from. We are currently looking for the next round of student leaders. So if you'd like to get involved, I'm actually going to share the faculty advisor's email address. I just realized we're recording this, so I don't know if he's okay with me putting it in the chat, but we will share with you how you can get connected, so that if you're interested for the coming academic year. But I also want to say that even if you don't end up being involved as a student leader, all of the information can be found on Presence, which is the site that TCC uses to upload all of student organization information, and they also promote events there. So to summarize that, I'll share the faculty advisor's email address as a follow-up. I'll let Jessica and Melissa have that so that we can share that, but also be on the lookout for when TCC makes posts about student organizations, because I don't know when the next meeting will be at this moment, but I do know that we need student leaders, and our faculty advisor is really great about Engineering Club really being what the members of Engineering Club need. One of our goals this semester was to have opportunities for personal and professional development, and then we got to team with career services, and that's happening. And so I highly encourage you to look into it more when we're able to share that contact information. I've had a wonderful experience with it.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
We will definitely send that contact information out in our follow-up email that will include the recording of this event. So we'll put all that there together. So I think we have another question, and I think this will probably be our last question just for time's sake. The student did engineering club in high school and wants to know if they should mention that in their resume, or in an interview when they are looking for their first internship or engineering job.
I think it can be very helpful to include that, because it kind of shows that long-term interest and passion for the field, that you were connected with engineering club early on. And I'm not quite sure when you were in high school or how long it's been, but I still think it could be great about that. Tell me about yourself when you're introing in an interview, whether it's been 2 years or 10 years out of high school. That would be great. When it comes to the resume, a lot of times we recommend that, once it's been a couple of years out of high school, that you start dropping the high school content off. However, when it's relevant content and it's, maybe a couple more years out, then it could be acceptable, but we can help you with that. I think it's great to tell that story, whether it's, just been a couple years or it's been a while, because it shows that long-term interest and desire to work in that field and being connected and involved in that capacity. So I think that can help you stand out.
All right, no other questions have come in, and we're almost right at 3 o'clock. So.
All right. Well,
All right. Well, yeah, we will wrap it up. You know, if you guys want, you can take a photo of this page so you have our contact information, but we will also send out a follow-up email so that way you will automatically have our contact information. You'll have a recording of this event, and we'll send that engineering club contact information. If you think of any questions that you didn't get to ask today, you're welcome to email us, or you know, you can attend again when we have this event next week, whatever you prefer. But we would love to meet with you all and do mock interviews and review those resumes. So otherwise, I if you guys just will have a great afternoon. Thank you all for
thank you
coming.
guys.